morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Antonio. My name is Dana Clark, and my pronouns are she and her. I serve on the worship committee, and I sing in the choir. I attended my first service here 33 years ago, and I knew right away this was the place for me. I'm inspired by our commitment to working for social justice, and I enjoy writing songs that express the values we share. Our weekly worship is where we connect, share inspiration and information. To begin, let's acknowledge this geographical place where we are currently located, the home and traditional lands of the Coahuiltecan people, original and indigenous stewards of this place, now called Bexar County, San Antonio, Texas. At our church, we believe in acting a universal love that binds us in mutual care and affection, especially in our work for justice for all and for our planet. Our faith is all-inclusive, and all means all. If you are new to us or attending for the first time today, we welcome you. We ask you, please sign in on our chat stream and fill out a visitor's card. We'd like to get to know you and follow up with you. Wherever you are on your life's journey, we hope you will find your place with us.
Life is the greatest gift of all the riches on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with deeds of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no barrier mars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. It rains the wind, it chains the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are of life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
Hi, my name is Sydney Fry, and today I'm going to be lighting the chalice. The flaming chalice unites our members in worship and symbolizes the spirit of our faith. Today's chalice lighting words remind us that even when things are not okay, there's love holding all. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you, that everything is okay right now. That there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things to you, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of her chalice, let us rest in this love. By Molly Brewer. Thank you.
We are called, as Unitarian Universalists, to build the beloved community where all are welcome as blessings, and the human family lives in forgiveness and grace, whole and reconciled. We know that this aim takes work, and so we are committed to live and behave as a community in covenant. Let us recite our covenant that articulates our guidelines and binds us together in community. The words can be found on your screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. Today I read a quote from Jeff Brown. I am always surprised when friends apologize for being in a bad mood or sharing their life challenges when I bump into them, as though there is something wrong with sharing our difficulties with each other. This is yet another example of the bullshit positivity world we created in Western life, where we are only acceptable to each other if we share good news. I wonder if we have communicated the message that someone else's bad news is unacceptable because we are trying to bypass our own difficulties. Whatever it is, this has to stop. We aren't going to co-create a genuinely positive world until we can hold the space for each other's shadow. Better an authentic frown than an inauthentic smile any day. A smile that is built on pretentious foundation isn't a smile at all.
As a way for us to connect as a community, you are invited to share a joyful event, a sorrow, a concern, by entering it on the chat stream. Please let us know what is in your heart. For ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we come fully alive. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are heard and held in compassion. At this time of complexity, may we especially listen more deeply and grow more involved with and connected to each other. Join me in silent meditation now as we write our joys and sorrows on the chat stream while Jaime plays our meditation music. Take a deep cleansing breath and exhale. This week, maybe we need to do that again. For all our joys, sorrows, and concerns, may we feel empathy and compassion. For all that is unspoken, may the caring of our community offer a space of deep kindness, loving, and just action.
A farmer had some puppies he needed to sell. He painted a sign advertising the 4 little pups and went about nailing it to a post on the edge of his property. As he was driving the last nail into the post, he felt a tug on his overalls. He looked down into the eyes of a little boy. "Mister," he said, "I want to buy one of your puppies." "Well," said the farmer as he rubbed the sweat off the back of his neck, "these puppies come from fine parents and cost a good deal of money." The boy dropped his head for a moment, and then he reached deep into his pockets and pulled out a handful of change and held it up to the farmer. I've got 39 cents. Is that enough to at least have a look?" "Oh, sure," said the farmer, and with that he let out a whistle. "Come here, Dolly," he called out. And out from the doghouse and down the ramp ran Dolly, followed by 4 little bitty balls of fur. The little boy pressed his face up against the chain-link fence. His eyes danced with delight. As the dogs made their way to the fence, the little boy noticed that there was something else stirring in the doghouse. And slowly, another little bitty ball of fur emerged, smaller than the others. And it made its way down the ramp, and in a kind of awkward manner, the little pup started hobbling over to try and catch up with his family. "I want that one," the little boy said. The farmer knelt down at the boy's side and said, "Son, you don't want that puppy. He will never be able to run and play with you like the other dogs could." Well, with that, the little boy stepped back and started to roll up one of the legs of his trousers. And with that, he revealed 2 steel rods going down and attaching to a specially made shoe. Looking back up at the farmer, he said, "Well, you see, sir, I don't run too well either. And he will need someone who will understand." Well, with tears in his eyes, the farmer reached down and picked up that little pup.
It is now time for our invitation to generosity. The offertory brings us the opportunity to share the gifts we have received. These gifts have nourished our hearts and can contribute to the well-being of others. As we listen to Esperanza Garza Danweber and Jaime Ramirez do their version of We Gather Together, you may make an offering on our online giving portal through the link on the chat stream. Or you can mail a check made out to First UU Church.
Yours is pretty sideways.
Oh, here.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can you read it like that?
Yeah. I got it right here.
Okay. We gather together in joyful thanksgiving, acclaiming creation whose bounty we share. Both sorrow and gladness we find now in our living. We sing a song of praise to the life that we bear. We gather together to join in the journey, confirming, committing our passage to be a true affirmation in joy and tribulation. When bound to human care and hope, then we are free. When bound to human care and hope, then we are free.
Thank you, Esperanza and Jaime. That version demonstrates creativity and expertise. May we be grateful for all the gifts of time, talent, and treasure that serve to enhance us as a people, to support our wider community, and to make our world a better place.
The term spiritual bypassing was introduced by John Wellwood, a Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist who died in 2019, who defined it as a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business, to shore up a shaky sense of self, or to belittle basic needs, feelings, or unfinished developmental tasks. It's using spiritual concepts to avoid pain in oneself and or others, and it causes damage in all sorts of spiritual communities. As Unitarian Universalists, we might assume that spiritual bypassing mostly happens in fundamentalist, literal-minded faith traditions. For instance, about 8 or 9 years ago, my ex-husband and dear friend Kurt came across it when he and I were practitioners of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, a faith tradition known in popular culture as Hare Krishna. Kurt has cerebral palsy, which causes him to be unable to stand and walk, and he uses a wheelchair for this reason. On one occasion, one of the devotees told Kurt that if he chanted more, surrendered to Krishna more, and developed a positive attitude, then he would probably be able to stand and walk without needing to use his wheelchair. This devotee's advice is an example of one commonly seen example of spiritual bypassing, toxic positivity, or only acknowledging the positive aspects of life experiences. Barbara Ehrenreich wrote about this extensively in one of my favorite books by her, Bright-Sided, How the Relentless Promotion of Positive Thinking Has Undermined America. She said she was inspired to write the book by comments people made to her when she was diagnosed and treated for breast cancer. She said she was inundated with comments such as, "Everything happens for a reason, and God will never give you more than you can handle." She said, "Breast cancer, I can now report, did not make me prettier or stronger, more feminine or spiritual. What it gave me, if you want to call this a gift, was a very personal, agonizing encounter with an ideological force in America that I had not been aware of before, one that encourages us to deny reality, submit cheerfully to misfortune, and blame only ourselves for our fate." As I said earlier, we as Unitarian Universalists may believe that we don't engage in spiritual bypassing because we generally don't embrace a concrete, fundamentalist, literal faith tradition. We tend to pat ourselves on the back and think our critical thinking and our intellectual rigor prevent us from perpetuating such harmful practices. However, I've seen that exclusive focus on rationality and individual responsibility lead many liberal theologists to perpetuate what I consider to be other examples of spiritual bypassing. In their amazing book published in 2020, Radical Belonging, How to Survive and Thrive in an Unjust World While Transforming It for the Better, Lindo Bacon addresses this in their critique of the self-help movement, which they describe as our modern-day opiate of the masses because it helps us tolerate difficult lives without challenging the conditions that create it. For instance, what about the often recommended self-help advice to overcome personal obstacles by believing in oneself? As Bacon said, tell that to a trans kid of color whose parents just kicked him out of the house with only the clothes on his back and open wounds from his last beating. Those slogans just serve to make people feel terrible when they somehow can't transform their lives. Lindo Bacon applied this critique to their own contribution to the self-help and wellness literature, an approach described in their first book, Health at Every Size, which sought to reframe health and promote body positivity by refuting claims that only people in smaller, thinner bodies are healthy. However, in that first book, Bacon placed the responsibility of behavior change by divesting from weight stigma on the shoulders of the individuals harmed by that stigma. In their 2020 book, they likened that approach to buying an inhaler to manage one's severe asthma attacks. However, what is further needed is the equivalent of talking to one's neighbors in an apartment complex finding out that their asthma too has been worsened, and then collectively advocating for the landlord to address the damp, dusty, and moldy conditions of the building that are making the residents sick. In other words, a focus beyond the individual on the bigger picture of social justice and oppression is what is needed. According to Bacon, if we pin everything on personal behavior change, whatever our concern, sickness, addiction, exhaustion, it's reasonable to think we're the problem. We imagine that what's at work is not systemic injustice, but individual maladaptation, requiring an individual response. The message is that it's not society that's sick or crazy or messed up, it's you. There's a term for that, gaslighting. Stress has been pathologized and privatized, and individuals are assigned the burden for managing it. To illustrate this, Lindo Bacon draws on their own experience as a self-described genderqueer person in recovery for substance use and an eating disorder, trying to navigate and exist in a world that only acknowledges the gender binary. I can relate to this perspective a great deal as a non-binary, neurodivergent queer trauma survivor who has only realized these things about myself within recent years. Like Bacon, I have struggled to survive in many settings, including my own profession as a psychologist, that did not acknowledge large portions of my lived experience. When I came across admonitions in popular and professional literature, for instance, for abuse survivors to forgive their abusers, let go, and move on, I had an uneasy sense, which I had difficulty explaining for a while. In my career listening to trauma survivors, I've heard the same unease from many of them too. I've come to the conclusion that the quick advice to move on is a dismissal of the pain of people who have been abused, traumatized, and harmed by oppression. As stated in Judith Herman in her classic book, Trauma and Recovery, The Aftermath of Violence, From Domestic Abuse to Political Terror, when traumatic events are of human design, those who bear witness are caught in the conflict between victim and perpetrator. All the perpetrator asks is that the bystander do nothing. He speaks to the universal desire to see, hear, and speak no evil. The victim, on the contrary, asks the bystander to share the burden of pain. The victim demands action, engagement, and remembering. And this brings us to what we can do instead of spiritually bypassing others' accounts of pain, trauma, oppression, and mistreatment. As Judith Herman explains in her book, we listen, bear witness, and hold space. To hold space is the opposite of telling people how they should fix their pain. It's not telling marginalized and oppressed people to tone down their pain. Instead, holding space is to acknowledge the reality of someone's lived experience. The opposite of trauma is connection. The opposite of marginalization is belonging. To truly do social justice work, as we Unitarian Universalists like to claim so often that we do, then we need to actually welcome people's pain rather than labeling it negative or trying to distance ourselves from it.
This quote comes from Lindo Bacon, who wrote the book, How to Survive and Thrive in an Unjust World, while transforming it for the better. Forgive me if I paraphrase just a little. If we don't address collective suffering and the systemic change that might alleviate it, wonderful techniques like mindfulness, for example, lose their revolutionary potential and instead cause harm. The danger in placing the responsibility for healing from trauma on an individual is not just that we can harm that person, but it also prevents us from considering a broader, more collective solution to the crisis of inequity that caused the trauma.